Hi, and welcome to the studio here today. My first question to you is congratulations on being into the ARIA charts recently. That's obviously a massive achievement. How do you feel about that?
Really great. I've released a few albums that have found their way into like the genre specific charts before
Yeah.
because you have the jazz and blues chart and the classical chart. So in that kind of world, I've had some moments of being charted, which so I've
Yeah.
had that thrill before. But this time was really special because the album I released debuted on the All Australian albums chart. So across all the different genres.
Yeah.
So it means that even though it's just number 61, it's not even sort of like a published list.
Yeah.
But receiving that email that said that that's what had happened just absolutely reassured me that the album I've made is being listened to by other people. Like, I'm not bothered by what number it is so much as just hoping that because you put so much work into making an album and releasing it.
And obviously you touched on all your own work. So how did you begin coming into this type of composing?
Yeah, so I started out as a jazz composer and
Yeah.
performer. So I did like an undergrad degree at
Mm.
VCA. And over time, because that was quite a long time ago, over time, I've managed to, I don't know, find this space in the industry between jazz and classical. So I started composing chamber music and writing more classical style piano pieces. And for a long time, I was able to release my music through ABC, so being an ABC Classic or ABC Jazz artist. And then with the last couple of albums, it sort of led me to more these broader questions about what it means to be releasing on a label where you're associated with a particular genre. And I
Mm.
decided to create my own record label, which is called Amica Records. And it's basically just for kind music because that's what my music is. It's very soothing and meditative.
And
And
I love that. Yeah.
deliberately avoiding using a genre label because I think once you do that, you sort of feel a bit boxed in to what it's supposed to be. And so it's more like a reflection of who I am as an artist to release music on a kind music label.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And I guess your music and all the different ways you go about it will be influenced by the autistic impact that you have as a neurodivergent artist. So I assume not only the fact that you can jump around based on how you're feeling that time, but have obviously a creative control over it.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you've absolutely hit the nail on the head because I mean, I think I felt a lot of confidence to create music that's a bit like outside the norm
Mm.
and between genres because I felt like a fish out of water everywhere anyway.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I really struggled to learn other people's music. So when I was studying jazz, I struggled to sit and practice music that was written by other people because I couldn't remember the theoretical concepts behind it. And
Mm.
I also got really anxious about the lack of structure that you have in playing jazz music. But then classical repertoire, like playing Bach or Mozart or something, I also felt a little bit bored by, by
Yeah.
the repetitiousness of that type of practice. And so I just started composing because I think that was a way of firstly passing my degree. Because when
Yeah.
you compose your own music, you can kind of play it yourself straight away
Mm.
to some degree. So it helped with that. But then I think really it tapped on this need to kind of express myself in my own way and not feel like I have to fit in and be able to do stuff exactly the same way as other people. Like it was very empowering. Starting my own label, I realized just how important having autonomy and
Mm.
a sense of control kind of is. So when you have your own label, you can release your music when you want, however you want, which sometimes I think is really important. I mean, I guess a lot of autistic people need to have a sense of autonomy, but also because we live in a world where we're expected to adjust the way that we want to communicate or go about our day or be in a
Mm.
workplace or a school environment, adjust it in ways that is not naturally who we are.
Yeah.
So to have that type of autonomy as an artist is just such a gift, and I feel so lucky to be able to do that.
I would say, as also as part of the autistic community myself, it's such
Congratulations.
a thank you. A car carrying. I just am pleased with all the work like musicians yourself do, and especially as well with the meetups you've been working with at the moment.
Yeah, they've been awesome.
Yeah. Can you tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about that?
yeah. So I had this kind of crazy idea, which, a lot of neurodivergent people come up with ideas that other people might not think of. But
Yes.
because I've been in the music industry now for about 16 years, and over time you do find yourself at various points having to attend some kind of industry networking type of thing. And it's often you walk into like a venue and it's really loud and everybody's shouting and everyone's trying to kind of present the best version of themselves. Like
Mm.
it's not just about autistic masking or something. It's like everybody's kind of, I guess, like spruiking themselves, because we're all trying to get our music to be noticed by the industry. So you
That
walk in and it's really like high energy, lots of schmoozing, and I just used to find those sorts of spaces so incredibly overwhelming. Just even the level of volume in the room, but also just that feeling like you're spending so much time talking to people that don't necessarily understand who you are.
mm.
And when I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD in my late 30s, I was thinking, oh, finally everything made sense. And then I encountered so many other people that have been on this journey a bit like me and have learned this stuff about themselves much later than they would have liked. And I thought, well, maybe there's the need, therefore, to create an environment where neurodivergent musicians can come together and network in our own way and have, sensory and communication supports and things that will actually help us like genuinely have a good time.
Yeah.
And I call it like a social event for people who hate social events. It's just not exclusive. Every autistic person is different. And
Yeah.
of course, neurodiversity covers a really broad range of neurotypes and different types of needs. But basically, I've built them around just some really basic things. Like there's always a social story that explains what the event will be like. There will be sensory tools and craft stuff around the space. We have conversation cards and they're about music. So it's things like, what do you think of Taylor Swift? Or if you could learn any new instrument, what would it be? And then I have little name tags. I mean, one is just obviously like your name and your pronouns, but I
Yeah.
also have another tag that you can put on that says, I like talking about,
Oh,
and
that's
then you
awesome.
put it in.
Yeah.
And that's been so brilliant. A lot of neurodivergent musicians, probably the music itself is their special interest. But within that, there's often some kind of real niche skill or interest that we all have. And I remember one time I put on my label, I said I like talking about granular synthesis, which is this very complex way of manipulating sound to create
Okay.
ambient effects. And like within 2 minutes of putting the sticker on, I'd met like 3 people who also loved granular synthesis. And it's like just that idea that you can go deep really quick. There's no need for small talk because we all kind of agreed that small talk is kind of not so fun for us. So
Yeah.
it was just amazing. It was just amazing having that opportunity to just talk in a way that felt like me, and just the comfort of feeling like I'm around people that understand. So I feel way less pressure to make eye contact, to hold a sensory tool in my hands, to just say, I need a break, I'll come back and chat to you later, or but also even just the awkwardness of negotiating group conversation. Like I
Mm.
always stress about things like, is it my turn to speak yet?
Yes.
And you're still going to have that anxiety when you're surrounded by neurodivergent people because it's just people communicating with each other. But that like it's almost like if I said out loud, is it my turn to speak yet? Everybody in the group would be like, yeah, go for it. Like as in that wouldn't be awkward in and of itself because we
Yeah.
all are probably thinking that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. And I've met a lot of people at the meetups who have also been newly diagnosed. And for some people, it's been the first time they've been like out in the world identifying as autistic or ADHD because they just haven't felt any confidence yet to disclose that diagnosis to the people in their life.
Mm.
And so they walk into this room and it's just this feeling of being so welcome and like a safe space, which is, yeah, just so special.
It creates that community, and
Yep.
I'm sure, obviously, it's such a safe space as well. And with your new record, Forever Change, can you tell us some of the themes that you explored throughout?
It's the first one that I've released, I guess, kind of really fully understanding who I am as a person because it's since being diagnosed as autistic and ADHD. I had made this lullaby album a few years ago, which has been my most popular album called Forever and No Time at All. And on that album, I tried to create soothing piano music that like babies might fall asleep to, but also be really soothing for adults.
Mm.
And it's worked really well. And so for this new album, Forever Changed, I decided to kind of go back to the music therapy community, but also talk to the neurodivergent community and kind of think about how to make an album that might explore the sensory experience of music for other autistic and ADHD people, as well as myself.
Mm.
Um, and, you know, because I realized that for me, if I am dysregulated and I need to sort of calm myself down, I'm not going to put on soothing, quiet piano music. Like I'm listening to electronic music or
Yeah.
like Meshuggah or something like
Yes.
that. So ultimately, I ended up creating this album that has this sort of meditative compositional style, but there's all these extra layers in the music. So there's a lot of ambient effects and strings and harp and synthesizers with like arpeggiators and patterns going around. So the idea is that it's in surround sound and it's very immersive and
Yeah.
you can kind of hopefully regulate your emotions and sensory needs a little better. Well, at least if you have a similar sort of sensory profile to me, perhaps it will have an extra sprinkling of fairy dust beyond just thinking it's a nice album or something. And the music does seem to regulate some other autistic folks, not just myself, which is
Yeah.
great. Somebody said once that I've got this like repeated synth note that just goes around and around and around. It sounds a little bit like a wood block. And it sort of moves around the room in surround sound. And I remember when I made it, I said to my partner who's producing it, I don't know why I really feel the need to do this, but I just really want to put it on the album. And he was like, okay, no worries. And then when I thought, well, will anybody else actually like this sound? And then somebody said, that is the most satisfying sound I've ever heard in my
Yeah.
life. I was like, yes.
Yes.
So it's been a really fulfilling project. Yeah.
Yes, and it absolutely sounds that way. Obviously, music therapy and just music regulating in general is such an important thing. And if
Yeah.
people wanted to reach out to you, where can we find you and your
Yeah.
music? Mm.
Yes, good question. My website is natbartsch.com. Bartsch is spelt a little complicated. It's NatBartsch.com. And actually, on there, I have a mailing list that you can sign up for all my news, but I also have a page that's about my neurodiversity advocacy.
Hey,
And so it's like a separate mailing list where I write only about, you know, neurodiversity related events and things that are happening. So
yeah.
you can also just join that one, like if you want to know when the next meetup I'm planning is, or um, yeah,
Yes, and I
yeah,
would highly recommend anyone that is watching us right now today to check you out. Thank you for this interview, and also back to the studio.